Welcome to the acclaimed podcast, The Deep Dive, featuring your esteemed hosts, Andy Monitor and Drew Dinzik, powered by BetSperts.
Welcome to The Deep Dive. Is this technically episode 500, Andy?
Hey. Yeah, that is true. Although on episode number 1, I did not have the sec. Oh, there it is. But yes, it is number 500. I never thought episode 500 would. When we started, I didn't think like, hey, episode 500, I'm gonna go through a laundry list of things that happened to the Raiders this year. Because Jesus Christ, like again, we're doing the AFC West today, part of it. And this is this is a fun division. I've been looking forward to this one, but man, it's kind of similar to when we did the Jaguars, and it's like I'd forgotten how many things Urban Meyer had done, and then I get to the Raiders, I'm like, I forgot how many things had happened in Las Vegas over the course of 13 months, even just going to before last year's season. So I don't know, anything you want to say before we dive in? We're gonna
the city was
I meant
great.
in general
we got Vegas on the mind.
I was in Vegas yesterday, and now we're doing Las Vegas. But yes, we'll do.
Yeah, we should mention. Yeah, mention a couple.
We
things.
did a podcast last Friday with Mr. Benson, your manager of the Circa Sportsbook, because all these previews are brought to you by the Circa contests that Derek is apparently going to be financing part of if you guys don't enter, which is the beauty of it. If it does not fill up, it is a guaranteed contest. There will absolutely be the prizes that are advertised. It does not matter if it doesn't fill up. All that money and all that rake-free money, you can enter up to 9 of these if you combine the Survivor and the traditional pick'em contest where you pick 5 games against the static spread that they put out on Thursday morning. Huge money. Sign up. And again, if you have questions about it or the proxy process, hit us up. I can give you a little guidance here. It's not hard.
Extremely easy.
We
like
met up with Maddie. Extremely easy. And let's get into the team.
We met some of the Deep Dive Discord guys out there. We met a lot of the VSiN folks out there. It was a super fun weekend overall. Got to meet a couple industry people that I was dying to meet and had great time with them. Went to the Arts District, learned a new place in town. That place rocked.
That place was cool.
That was very cool. Yeah, so it was a great trip overall.
Guys,
great
my
job
wife
by
was
you.
not pleased Friday night. Yeah, Patrick. Oops. We got to say hi to Adam.
We tied one on Friday. I did some big boy drinking on Friday.
We did some big boy candy eating too. And the combination of and then Friday or Saturday, we woke up early. I did because I was still on Central Time. I wake up, it's like 4:30 in the morning, and I realized I actually slept in because normally I get up at 5 a.m. Central Time, which is 3 a.m. on the West Coast. So I slept in at still 4. I'm gonna go play some blackjack.
Drink some Bloody Marys.
I'm going to have a Bloody Mary and a coffee. And then, we drank all day long. And
it was a great day Saturday, really.
I feel good being back, though.
Yeah, won some bets on preseason football. By the way, it turns out long teasers in the preseason turn out to be quite good. So glad I know that. Right. Surprise. It was a good week of preseason football overall. Nothing really changes my opinion about any players or teams. It was just fun football. Let's talk about the Raiders a little bit.
Yeah, it was nice. There was a couple teams where it's like, this was a nice performance, but I was expecting it. So I was happy that my preconceived notions were, kind of confirmed. That was good. I didn't love a few things about New York, the Giants squad, which, we always said there was. It's one of those things where every one of these teams, and again, if you're doing anything with NFL prep, I think this is the biggest part of getting your power numbers adjusted through the first quarter of the season. It's like, write down the things that you don't know, because everyone's taking notes. And here's the things we know. Write down the things that you don't know that matter, and then start answering those questions. Be like, where do I put Daniel Jones' performance after 3 weeks on a scale of 1 to 10? Where did I think it would
scale
be?
of D to F, is it more D or F?
How much do I have to downgrade them based off this? Or injuries can happen. There's many things that can happen, but start looking at all the things you don't know, and then try to start answering those questions over the first 4 games, and then come to some sort of conclusion. And use your context, as we're going to get to a team where you can't always just look at the first 3-4 games and make a conclusion based on who they play.
This is a team that I have a lot of questions about. This Raiders team.
The
first question is, how in the fuck did they make the playoffs? How in the blue fuck did this team keep it together through everything that happened to them last year and make a playoff spot? Absolutely one of the most improbable playoff runs that I can remember. And as we entered last season, I was cold Raiders, cold. I didn't have huge positions.
We were both. I took a season win total under.
Oh, you did? Okay. I was cold in that the Mayock experience wasn't doing it for me. The Gruden experience wasn't doing it for me. And they stripped down that offensive line. And I literally thought they were doing it to prove that Derek Carr wasn't a guy they could build around so they could move on from him, because they were going to make him play behind a bunch of nobodies who couldn't block. And I was like, well, if there's one thing about Derek Carr, if you can get him under a little bit of pressure, he's going to turn into the freaking,
which is still very true.
0. But he persevered last year. He persevered. Not only did he persevere under difficult roster conditions, his coach left in a lurch, in a flurry of indignity for some racy emails.
It was racist-y, homophobic, misogynistic.
He did kind of fall. I can't really remember.
But I mean, even before the season started, they had a few higher executives jump ship, and again, they didn't come out and say this is why I quit, but it was assumed to be money based because of the bad lack of money flow in this organization, which sometimes happens when you pay a coach too much. But it was week 5 was the Gruden email thing. And I have a conspiracy theory about Carr. I have a conspiracy that because this is the only thing that's come of the entire Washington Redskins.
The Raiders coach got fired.
The Raiders coach got fired, and they lost to a very bad Bears team the week before. I think maybe that was it. Gruden. If Gruden could have beat the Bears, maybe we keep this under wraps. But we're fine getting them out of the league. This is embarrassing now. But they were 3-2. They just lost the Bears game. They did start 3-0, but it was against
Ravens. Was a lucky win. Steelers.
The Ravens was
very
a team,
surprising.
The Ravens had all those injuries coming in. They were a little uncertain. It wasn't a bad 3-0, but it was a surprising 3-0. And then when they started to lose some games, we were both like, all right, this is the team we expected. And then then you got the Gruden. It wasn't a firing. He quit. And then you know what? Bisaccia went 7-5 as an interim. And a lot of it was close game variance. They ended up with a lot of close game variance, but you spoke about Carr. Carr had 4,800 fucking yards last year, Drew.
It's crazy.
He had more than Josh Allen, Aaron Rodgers, Joe Burrow. He had 35 fewer yards.
And his
Mahomes.
His wide receiver 1 is in jail. He was in jail for half the season. He still went career year.
They won 4 overtime games.
So oh geez, the overtime.
I mean, if you're going to lose a regular season win total under, a team that wins 4 overtime games is usually going to do it to you. But you mentioned the Ruggs thing that was later in the season, but I
think that was during the bye week. It was during their bye week.
Massive.
So they came out after that and they were totally distracted against the Giants and they lost on the road. But I guess really, I think the key takeaway not only was Carr's ultimate bottom line performance way, way, way better than expected. He did probably the most admirable job that I can remember in recent years of being a really vocal leader in the locker room. Because if that team didn't have kind of a veteran voice to kind of keep everybody from just being like, well, this season's fucked. See you later. See you next year. This thing would have unraveled horrifically after either of those two things happens. Either Gruden getting, canned for the racist emails or Ruggs killing someone. Either of those things tanks the season. and yet the Carr kind of kept these guys together somehow. I give it more to him than I give it to the interim coach, because it did seem like the players played hard for Carr. They liked him.
Well, and we mentioned it too when they hired Rick Focaccia, as Dan referred to him in the chat. I called him
Rick Focaccia.
Yeah. They mentioned we mentioned this last year. I think it was your theory, and I really liked it. He's a special teams coach, so you keep you don't make one of your coordinators have a bunch of new responsibilities. You put a different guy in charge. Keep your coordinators. Keep some continuity going. Let somebody else handle the day-to-day stuff and the big decisions. And I mean, they won a lot of close games, but you still need to go out and win those games. And it's funny too, like there's just a list, like the things that went on with this team. And I mean, I don't want to throw this in here because a lot of them are negatives and this isn't in it. See, it's 2022, so it's not as big of a deal as this would have been 10 years ago. But like the Carl Nassib coming out,
sure,
that would have been the biggest distraction for like 20 of the teams in the league. It was like 10. It was like, I don't even know if it made the top 10 of distractions for this team.
No,
because they had another player arrested for I don't remember if it was gun charges. Damon Arnett, he was like waving a gun on TikTok or Twitter or God knows what, and then he got arrested for threats. They had another guy, which honestly, I'm more mad at Nate Hobbs than anybody. After Ruggs kills a person with his car, this guy goes out and get a DUI a few weeks later.
That's right.
So they had another person arrested. They had the weird game with Cleveland moved to like a Monday afternoon because of all the COVID. I wrote this down too, just because it was just one of those years. Remember, they were the team that was in the lightning delay in the indoor stadium at SoFi.
Oh, I did not remember
that game was goofy too, and they ended up losing. I think that was one of their first losses. That was week 4, I believe. But it was a trying season, and I think we do need to give Derek Carr a lot of credit.
Yeah, and I think like that, and that in and of itself is why handicapping them for the 2022 campaign is so tough. Because
and it's why I mentioned find out all the things you don't have answers to. And some teams it's smaller things, like I don't know, pick a team like Minnesota is like the biggest question you have to answer is how much of what you saw in the Rams offense is what you're going to see from Kevin O'Connell.
Sure.
Like how much of a difference are you going to see from that's the biggest thing, and maybe a little bit with the pass. Will the pass rush be decent? With this team, it's like everything. And I mean, we'll get into 2022 when we get there, but it was, again, a very, very lucky team in every aspect, except for players getting arrested and stuff, I guess. But they won all these close games that usually regresses, but it doesn't have to.
Sure.
And we're talking about, this is the first team we're talking about in a series on a Monday. Right. This is usually a shithole team. This is a 10-win team who went to the playoffs last year. And they lost to the Bengals, but a lot of teams lost to the Bengals.
It's also a 10-win team that went to the playoffs and had to hire a new general manager and a new head coach in the offseason, which is also not usual. And, everything about this was weird. It's just a weird ass team. The weirdest part of their entire season was obviously I say weirdest part from a betting standpoint was they almost tied week 18 and cost every sports book in America its opportunity to operate as a franchise. That would have been one of the bigger one of the bigger stories of betting in all time.
I mean,
that
it still was
a tie.
The fact that it almost happened.
Yeah, I mean it was Staley takes the timeout. Focaccia elects to run Jacobs one more time and then kick the field goal to get the win, and the rest was history. They went to Cincinnati in the wild card round and put up a very game effort. They were in that game. They were live dogs in that one, and they had 2 chances, I believe, to try to tie that game late. There was a very memorable play that I believe Carr was just a hair off target, hits a Bengal in the helmet when he had Waller wide open to take it in for the game-tying touchdown in the fourth quarter there. And, the ball bounces a little differently in that game. We may not see the Bengals go to the Super Bowl, and our opinions about Cincinnati are very different. But Carr, that was his first ever playoff game as a pro, and he acquitted himself, I thought, fairly well in that contest. He was 29 of 54, 300 yards passing, a touchdown and a pick, got sacked 3 times, lost 1 fumble. So it was a mixed bag in terms of stat line, but 54 pass attempts, you're carrying a playoff team in that at that point. And he was targeting Hunter Renfrow, Zay Jones, Darren Waller, as we mentioned, Brian Edwards. Oh shit. I forgot Deshaun Jackson was on this team. What was the game where Deshaun Jackson caught the touchdown and then ran backwards? What was that game? Do you remember? Oh, there were so many crazy things that happened with the Raiders.
Deshaun Jackson was he was brought in to do one thing, which was weird because they had that one thing already. I don't know. Like that was an odd pickup, I thought. But again, Waller is a high ceiling tight end. Very high ceiling. Renfrow is an absolute, target. You can give the guy 15 targets a game, and he does really well out of the slot. Like you have a very. That's one of the questions we will not have to answer. Will the, if everyone stays healthy, will the receiving core be good? Yeah, you have your ceilings for your wide receiver 1 and your tight end are the best in the league, essentially. Like if there's some pressure taken off Waller by having a true wide receiver 1, he can be a tight end 1 like that, or the tight end 1. He's top 5, I believe, for sure. So, and you have a nice little combination in the backfield. Like there's some, and like I said, a quarterback who threw 4,800 yards. The biggest question mark for me is a guy we saw take the offense, and again, this was so long ago. Like it's one of those things where probably not the same dude, but the McDaniels thing in Denver was bad. Like just he just decided he was going to blow this up, and the Cutler thing, and then every decision he made seemed to be the wrong one. And it, he went in there with some high expectations, but this, he went back to New England. Let's figure this out. He went back to New England after being the Colts coach for like 3 minutes. I feel like probably the guy has grown, and man, what he's done with less really speaks to him as a coordinator. I just don't know about him as a head coach. Like those sometimes are 2 different things. You can say, like, I see so many things like, look what he did with Mac Jones. Like he knew he had to baby him, and they did how well they did with that at quarterback, fighting through some of the Cam stuff. He almost brought a team to the playoffs when Tom Brady went out in like the first day.
Yeah.
That team won 11 games in a 16-game season, didn't make the playoffs. Like he's done a lot with less than what he has here. It just has not done it as a head coach. So it's tough to say, because sometimes the added responsibilities of being a head coach affect an offensive or defensive coordinator, and it's like you never see what we got out of them as a coordinator. So I don't know what your thoughts are on McDaniels, but I think that's one of the biggest things is just, I think it's probably an upgrade from a special, not that Biscaccia, I'm going to say his name 6 different ways today, did a bad job, but it should be an upgraded coach. And I don't know, like McDaniel's thoughts from you. You're the New England guy.
My expectations were mixed coming in. I agree with your overall thesis that he has a lot to work with here, and it should work at times. It depends on Carr entirely, and whether like Carr got tested with the ultimate last year, and he's persevered, and it may have been circumstances that forced him in, to be that way, to be that guy. And now in a year where there's no pressure, is he the same guy, or does he revert in a lot of ways and is more like the guy we expect, who's, throwing the ball away on 4th down, and, just in general, like not composed under pressure, when the pass rush is getting home. And in the back of my head, I can't get over that. And I think the McDaniels part of the equation for me is not like, I never looked at what was going on with Carr and thought, God, if you could just get a good fucking play caller in here, this guy would emerge, right?
Yeah,
Like that was never really it. And
that's fair.
And since we've seen McDaniels, I worry that he is still too much of just not a super person to
Impetuous.
Like, that's a fair way to put it. He's a red ass, and he has a proclivity for getting after his guys in a way that I don't think professionals really love it. And I think that running his running backs into the ground in Hall of Fame game, running just in general, kind of being a red ass at camp, like that's great if you are then winning and the team's like, all right, this guy's being an asshole to us, but we're winning, so I'll put up with it. But the minute the going gets tough, if you kind of get into these guys face at a halftime, you're down, through 3 touchdowns to the Chiefs, and your playoff hopes are fleeting, like they're going to tune you out. And I think that McDaniels he's got too much baggage, and he is not conducting himself in a way that is going to, really connect with this team. And I think you have a pretty fragile kind of relationship in that locker room right now, considering Carr took over last year and really kind of motivated these guys and got them fired up in a positive way. And now McDaniels is coming in with the stick, right? And it's to me, I think I was on the fence. I think it's going to fail. I don't think this will work. And if if McDaniels had this roster and was in the NFC South or even the AFC South, then I think I would probably feel differently. And I think it's just on the basis of winning would allow him to act like that, right? But because the
it's easier to put up with
the going is going to get tough, and when it does, these guys are going to quit on him. Yeah, that's my general vibe.
Yeah, and especially if it goes the other way, you can't build enough equity up with like half a season of doing well, and then because if it starts out hot and then they run into some trials and or tribulations or a combination of both, and they lose a few games and he's still acting like that, it's like Seth Rogen, like now the fart, now the tuxedos seem kind of fucked up. when he farted, like it's not fun anymore. Like, all right, I'm not putting up with this guy's shit, but it is like if they win, it's fine. Then do whatever you want. Yeah. And again, the biggest thing with the new regime and whatnot, it's like, all right, we got rid of Mayock, and we've had such poor use of draft capital for years, even high draft capital. When you did well, it's like, well, you got the wrong
Cleveland Farrell.
You got the wrong you got the wrong defensive end. Yeah. So it's funny, like they get a guy who comes from a franchise who hasn't been great with draft capital, but for different reasons, because I don't think they didn't value it there. And I wonder if that was part of the reason they did, like, why would we use this draft pick in the first round to pick a wide receiver when we could get maybe the best wide receiver in the league right now? And we'd have to give up a draft pick next year. But like, let's say you take a wide receiver in the first round 2 years in a row. You're saying like there's 100% chance one of those two turns into, a number one or top 5 wide receiver in the league. No, it's still probably 50-50. Like I'm fine. I mean, it was a king's ransom, but again, you get a sure thing. The rebuild feels weird, but it's like this whole division is just this crazy arms race. Nobody is like backing down from not rebuilding. Like everyone's gone and done win now, which is why this is going to be such a wild division. Yeah, the Ziegler thing was, I think long term it's probably a good thing. We'll see how that goes. And then did you see the rest of the coaching staff?
Yeah, Patrick Graham as a defensive coordinator is a guy that I was kind of quietly watching in New York last year. Like this guy's might be like, if things go right for this team, this guy's going to be considered for head coaching candidacy because he seems to have a unique vision, and I like him generally.
Exactly. Like, and the year before, his first year, he took that defense, and last year they had some bad luck, but he took that defense and turned it into like a top 10.
Yeah. Yeah.
They did
with
things
personnel that were unimpressive. Yeah.
Yeah, they did some things really well 2 years ago. And yeah, he was going to be retained by Dable. That was the plan. Said, I'm getting here. I'm keeping this guy. He was lured away. And he's been a DC for a few years, so he has experience. The other guy was a guy in the New England roster that came with McDaniels, Mick Lombardi, who is the son of a guy who yelled at Drew on a podcast.
Oh, it is? That's his kid?
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
I thought that one was funny. But again, it's one of those where
I didn't know there was a connection there.
Yeah, it's one of those things where it's like, hey, you're the OC, but it's McDaniels' team.
It's McDaniels' job. Okay. So a couple of interesting more thoughts just in the organizational structure here. Mike Mayock leaves after a very weird tenure. A lot of the players that performed well in a playoff run last year were guys that Mayock got, but they were guys he got later in the draft, right? Like Hunter Renfrow may ultimately be a poor man's, Cooper Kupp. That's not crazy. His potential for kind of contributing at a high level is very real. He's 26 already. He's got paid, but like he's going to be a good contributor to this team. They got him in the 5th round. Similarly, like you had an absolute breakout last year from Max Crosby at edge. They got Max Crosby in the 4th round, right? Denzel Perryman, 2nd round pick, although he was picked by the Chargers. And then, he was a solid performer for them as a linebacker last year. I think they got Andre James, offensive lineman. I have as their highest graded lineman from last season. I think he was undrafted. He's now coming into his 3rd year, so he's solid. But then the other guys they took, like Alex Leatherwood and that list of guys who aren't even on the team anymore that we named, that's a problem. When your cornerback room is trash and, Damon Arnett is not contributing because he's, in dealing with legal problems, like that's what gets you fired. And there was just too many of those at the top of the draft for Mayock, which is why he's moving on. But like, there definitely are a lot of pieces on this roster if McDaniels can put it together correctly. And I think in general, still very concerned about the secondary, but I think Patrick Graham is a guy that I would believe in doing something solid with this unit of players, because there's not like, I don't know. Do you call the secondary a whole, or do they have enough?
It is. If you're going to call anything a whole, the secondary is a whole. So
okay.
And I mean, last touch on like coaching is John Gruden was a good coach. Like he was a good play
designer,
schemer, planner. He may not have been a good leader, and he was kind of a knob, but like there's a non-zero chance they are a worse coached team this year, because we have like in the distribution of results for McDaniels is like, oh, this guy's just never going to cut it as a head coach. He's a really good coordinator when he's on a good staff, and that's it. So I don't want to be like, Chucky was a really, really good head coach in all the aspects, but he put together good game plans and made things happen, like Derek Carr throwing for that many yards and winning a bunch of close games, like kept him in games. And
I had him as a good in-game adjustment guy too.
It dealt with Mayock's drafting, and who knows how many, if he had his fingers in that pie a lot too, if he was part of the problem with some of the talent acquisition. But
the first round picks over the last couple of years, it's a really, really, really bad
a mess.
List. It's a really bad list. And it's a lot of guys that aren't going to be on this team next year, which says even more. Yeah. So McDaniels 2.0, I was 50-50 in the offseason. I'm like 25-75 now. I think it's going to be a little bit of a surprise if this works long-term.
Yeah, McDaniels grinders just doesn't have the same ring.
No. And I mean, it seems like he's still inclined to operate like he's Bill Belichick, like he's won lots of Super Bowls, but he was the offensive coordinator on a lot of Super Bowl teams, not the coach. So it's tough to get away with that in the NFL.
Yeah. And then furthermore, just popping back real quick to not 2021, but after the season, they also got rid of team president after the season.
Oh, really?
And then he came back and said that it was a bad work environment, and then when he brought it up, he got fired. Like it still might just be a mess inside this team. So I mean, those are the kind of things that turn into the Washington situation where it's like, oh, this just keeps getting worse, and nobody wants to come here now because they don't have money. And
I mean, there was a lot we heard
spinning through a bunch of coaches, and
yeah,
there's problems.
we've heard long, hilarious stories about Mark Davis going back 10 years. Like he's a weird guy. The other owners don't like him, and in general, like going back to even Chucky getting fired was hysterical. That was the outcome of the Redskins doing a big time internal investigation.
Oh, I didn't even bring up him posting I can breathe on Twitter.
Yeah, right.
And then leaving it up for a long time. Like,
yeah, Mark.
Oh no, like what is going on in this city now, guys? So
yeah, it's tough.
Well, we'll finish up with the defense, but just I wanted to hear your thoughts because again, this defense, like you said, Max Crosby had 10 sacks. They brought in Chandler Jones, which I mean, you could have a really nice combo. You have some other pieces on this, on this defense that will be okay. You probably have a pretty bad secondary, but if you can continue to get stuff out of them, maybe Rocky Sin is a little bit, he's still early in his career. We could see something out of him or Morig, who again, these are younger players that I'm not all out on yet, but with Chandler Jones and you got Perryman.
Yeah,
like there's definitely pieces here, and then I mean even maybe some extra linebacker help they have. I'm trying to look at this. Cleveland Farrell is now delegated to depth, but again,
did they lose Quentin Jefferson? It looks like they did.
Yeah, he's gone.
I had him graded pretty high. That's the only player that they lost that I was like, oh, that might actually be a problem.
Sure.
Yannick Ngakoue obviously is a talented player, but you replace him with Chandler Jones, that's 1-for-1 in my mind. Max Crosby is the guy that you care about in that defensive line anyway in terms of production. And so as long as you just have some other talented players, I think you're going to get the most out of Max Crosby. That guy rocks. And I think, Perryman is a good player by my grades. The secondary all graded failing for me last year. Casey Hayward was the only borderline guy. Trevor Mooring is a rookie. So if you want to say needs more time,
it's hard for a safety to come in and just.
The other guys, Jonathan Abram, that guy doesn't deserve to be starting in the NFL. Nate Hobbs, super, super, super low grade on him, but he was a rookie. Trayvon Mullins, super low grade on him, but he didn't play much. Rocky Sin is a tough one, man. I do not know if that's the answer. And considering the help that the Indy defense gives their corners from the linebacking core in terms of pass protection, in terms of, just the scheme in Indy and the way that they played the pass, it felt like Rocky Sin should have done better with the chances he had there. And the fact that he didn't makes me think he's not going to. So
I thought he was only on his third year. It's his fourth year somehow.
Yeah.
Jesus, the guy's not as young as I thought. And again, I said nice things about Gus Bradley on a different podcast, but this was a Gus team. So you get like that, right. Cover three. We joke about like the zero or the, like who is it we used to joke about where they'd line the safety up like 50 yards off the ball?
It was Greg Williams.
I mean, it's kind of the same thing.
What was it? Jabril Peppers. Keep going. Peppers.
Keep going.
Keep going. Yes, keep going.
Keep it going.
Yeah.
Similar sign of defense. So again, we'll see. Maybe it's just with a different defensive mentality from Graham. We'll see a bump. If the defense plays better than we expect, then this team probably is a scary team that, again, it should be a team that is fighting for a playoff spot. And again, we talked about it a little, and this is where I want to go with it. Based on your grades of everything but the offensive line, I would expect you to have this as, a team that could tickle their way into the top 10 of offenses. And I wanted your thought on the offensive line because they have a very big negative, and that's that none of them are any good. But their positive is they're all back. We've seen that. We've seen that where it's like a team had a middling offensive line, but there was continuity and they played each other. They played with each other a bunch. So, I mean, continuity does matter a lot in a positional group, and especially in this. I don't know that it's just going to magically make them better. But if they are better, like that is what, and of all the things we've talked about, we said like Derek Carr was great last year. Derek Carr is horrible under pressure. And he played behind a bad offensive line. Like that's another feather in his cap. So if we have an offensive line that plays even league average, then this offense is scary, I think. Again, it depends. We've seen wide receivers change teams and just never have it again. I don't subscribe to that with Devontae. I think he's good enough not to let that happen. But your thoughts on the offense?
I think the offensive line is better than people grade. Okay. I mean, there's clear they clearly overshot draft capital wise for both Leatherwood and Colton Miller. Like neither of those guys should have been top 20 picks, and they both were. And those are your two tackles, and the tackle question marks are real. And Leatherwood may not even play tackle, right? Like he might. Who knows what his ultimate assignment ends up being. But they have a really, really good young center, in my opinion, in Andre James. I had him graded very well last year, and he had some tough assignments last year too. Like he held his own in some tough assignments, I thought. So that being a good anchor is real. The guards I have is just fine, not great. I don't actually know anything about Lester Cotton, but John Simpson I have his fine grade on him. So I think the offensive line is going to be league average, and I think Derek Carr, assuming that like he gels with McDaniels, could give you another year like you saw last year. Like there could be another one, but I'm also very prepared for a big old fat regression because the circumstances were so weird last year, and I'm still very, very hesitant to buy that Carr made a leap that's life changing, and now he's a bona fide guy that is just going to start for another 5 years in the NFL, right? Like there are still in the back of my head, I am waiting for the mistakes to show back up, and I don't know that you ever fix that, even if you do have a season like he had last year, because like what I'm getting at, right? Like this cuts one of two ways: either all the pressure is off this year, and he's like, it's kind of back to the old me, or all the pressure's off and all of a sudden he's playing even better because of the weapons they have and because he can focus more on his roles and responsibilities instead of just kind of keeping the players from quitting on the team. So grading wise, Devontae Adams and Hunter Renfrow I have as one of the more dynamic 1-2 wide receivers across the whole NFL. Those guys are both, they are complementary. They both run routes exquisitely. In fact, that's Devontae Adams' strength. If you kind of ask like the wide receiver Knicks, like what was good about Adams, it was almost always his the route running ability and creating separation from corners. And the fact that he played with Aaron Rodgers was gravy. Rodgers could deliver a ball on time to a place where only he could catch it, but there was perfect chemistry between those two players, and I don't see why there wouldn't be between him and Carr. Carr throws a decent deep ball. Carr doesn't have any obvious holes in his game besides the potential, the proclivity for sucking under pressure. So yeah, the fact that people throw Waller into the discussion here, who's a 29-year-old tight end. My grade on Waller last year was pretty bad, actually. I think his Pro Bowl season in 2020 was probably the peak you're going to get out of that player. He progressed. He made a big fat leap in 2019 to being very, very good. He was did you know he was a third voted comeback player of the year that year? I had forgotten that entirely. But then, the Pro Bowl he made in 2020 for Vegas, that was a great season from him as a tight end. And then last year I had him regressing pretty aggressively. So I think he's gravy. I don't know that you're really even counting on him much in the pass game. I think this is the Devontae Adams and Hunter Renfrow show. And then, whatever you get in the out of the running game from what is a very uninspiring, but at least there's a bunch of guys in the running back room, is probably matters a lot less than, the way that Carr can get the offensive line to gel, to buy him time, and then develop a little bit of chemistry with Devontae Adams. Then all of a sudden we're talking about a good offense. And the Raiders ceiling, if everything goes right for me, top 10, and their floor is pretty high because I like these wide receivers. I'd be surprised if they finish below 20. What about you?
Yeah, no, that's where I'm at. Unknowns are the offensive line taking any sort of meaningful step forward, and mostly the coaching. Like, I believe the receivers will be fine. You have good running backs, and then the defense should have a good pass rush and maybe bad secondary, maybe an overs team. But
going into the season, I have them as the 10th ranked offense.
Yeah, that's fair. Let's take a look at their schedule of games that they will play this year. And I don't know, bit of a mixed bag. There's some toughies on here, but it's one of those things where, we joked, you get to play the Jags and the Texans 4 times. Like, that's just going to make your schedule a little easier by most metrics. It's the opposite. Like, hey, you play the Chargers and Kansas City and Denver, who is likely greatly improved too. Like, it's just when that's, a third of your schedule was in a really, really tough division, it doesn't take a lot to make it a fairly tough schedule. Because if you look at their out of division games, I'm trying to, like, what if Denver's good? Like, if Denver's actually good, like, are their division games their 6 hardest games?
No, Rams.
Tennessee on the road.
Tough.
Oh, the Niners. All right. I'll cut the Niners. I'll give you.
Yeah,
that's a nice spot for them.
They play some really challenging quarterbacks.
Yeah, I'm not saying they have easy games.
Most of it's division. You're right. It is a lot of division.
The division.
Their division is so fucking hard. Yeah, having to play Mahomes twice, with this secondary, having to play Mahomes twice, Russell Wilson twice, and Justin Herbert twice that's a disaster. And then you add Stafford to the mix. Trey Lance at the end of the season. Mac Jones at the end of the season.
Bailey Zappi.
Matt Ryan in the middle of the season.
Ryan.
Yeah.
Jameis Winston possibly. Yeah. This is actually.
It's a really Kyler Murray's on there. Yeah, they're like I would. You know what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go through and do like just a hardest schedule from a quarterback opponent ranking.
I like that.
Because I'm curious, but without tracking that down and doing that number, I would be shocked if this isn't top 5 most difficult in terms of opposing quarterbacks.
I wouldn't be surprised if 2 of the top 5 are
actually, you know what? Yeah, this has got to be number 1 because you're playing Herbert twice, Mahomes twice, and Wilson twice. No one else is doing that. Yeah. You switch out any one of those guys for Carr, and I think it's an easier schedule because I have Carr as the fourth highest rated quarterback out of those 4. What about you?
Well, yeah, that's fair. And then, I mean, there's not like super disadvantageous spots outside of maybe that late game in Pittsburgh. The Tennessee game isn't great, but again, it's coming off a home game at least. Your bye is kind of wasted on what could be the worst team ever. Like, Houston has a really, really, really low floor. Like, it stinks to waste a bye on.
Yeah, you probably
really bad.
Are you going to talk yourself out of taking the points with Houston in that game? Probably, right? That's like Houston or pass. Oh, there's a Houston or pass spot.
It's Houston or pass, and that's probably just a pass because that's a game that ends up with a team winning by 30 half the time, and the other half is the Raiders stumble over their dick coming out of the bye because they have essentially a rookie head coach again who hasn't done it in a while. Yeah. Doesn't know how to prep a team right coming out of a bye, and we see a horrible performance. So, yeah, not a game I'm super excited to get involved with. But again, there's a few a few spots here where it's like, man, if this offense is good, and it really, really shows out, and the defensive secondary can't get anybody covered, like, why aren't we betting like over 54 in the KC game and laughing when that comes through in the middle of the third quarter? Because it's just there could be some really, really fun track meets with some of these better offenses.
Yeah, starting with that Chargers game. That's going to be one of the best. That might be the best afternoon game on week 1. What are the other ones in the afternoon? Do you remember?
No idea.
That's a big number too, 3.5. I'm not going to play that game. I don't really have an edge there. I thought that was fair, but boy, is that good. That's a big number. If that goes to 4, it's going to be tough to not play the Raiders. Don't want to, but this is a tough schedule, no matter how you slice it, particularly, but I think these are going to be entertaining games. Cool as hell that we get 4 primetime games out of them, including 3 in a row. Thursday night, they got some funny one though. They got Thursday night football, Sunday night football, and then they're playing Saturday at 8 p.m. on Christmas Eve. Saturday night football. 3 8 p.m. kickoffs in a row. They also have some early.
They were supposed to have a Saturday game last
2,
year,
3.
and I think it got pushed. That was the one that got pushed to Monday afternoon.
That was the one that got pushed. Yeah, they got 1, 2, 3 of the 4. The Raiders specials. This always happens to the Raiders more than any other West Coast team, but they got to play 4 early kickoffs on Sunday. Tennessee is an early kickoff. New Orleans.
The only bad one
Jacksonville,
too
and
is the
KC.
double. The New Orleans Jacksonville. That'll be the
Bang,
spot
bang.
where we'll watch like, hey,
Bang,
are the
bang.
Raiders gonna spend? It'd be funny if they spent that time in like Atlantic City. We didn't want to get them too far away from the casinos. The New Orleans Jacksonville.
No, they're gonna take them Lake Charles. After
Lake
they play
Charles. There you
take
go.
Lake
Right
Charles
next
and
to
then
New
right to
Orleans.
Jacksonville. Yeah,
this will be
there you go.
super funny if that actually that comes to fruition. But yeah,
Yeah.
it's a toughish schedule, and I mean, I don't know if you have anything else, but the odds are probably a little off then.
Yeah, I think so too. I think I just I feel like I feel like it's this is a lazy take. It sounds I feel like probably everybody's said this about the Raiders, but last year the way that the winds broke their direction, it's tough to see that happening again, on top of just in general some of the weaknesses. But Super Bowl 40-1, AFC 25-1 are both easy passes. AFC West 7-1 is an easy pass. I would need probably about 10-1 to play that. To make the playoffs, yes, plus 170 is crazy. That should be like in the plus 220 range. Regular season win total over under 8.5. I think this is an alt win total under or pass type of situation. And it's going to be a quick heel turn for me if Carr and Adams and McDaniels are like the 3 amigos who are vibing hard in like the first quarter of the season. It's going to be like, oh buddy, we got ourselves an old fashioned shootout in the AFC West where just take the dog, like the NFC West last year, the joke we made all fucking season, like just take the dog. These teams aren't that far apart. Like if Carr and Adams and McDaniels are all on the same page and vibing, then this Raiders team is going to be quick to upgrade. I think. What do you think?
That is my betting plan of attack is hope this team loses games and getting to continue to bet them as a dog with a good offense. Nothing better than having a dog price and your team is down by your team's down and they have the offense to get right back in it, and betting them as a dog on their team total over, betting some overs and some spots,
some second half bets on them.
I mean, you get a 51 and they're a 3-point dog. Like, you're going to give me like what if we get a 21 for some of these team totals and these higher, all day long with that.
Do you remember what McDaniels in-game decision-making was like from his time in Denver? Was he a good adjuster of?
I don't know. I have no idea. I can't
really remember.
Yeah, nor do I want to like use any data from like 10 years ago.
Okay.
Different man. I mean, think about you 10 years ago.
Yeah, well, I was a minus EV player. Yeah, very, very.
You had short hair. You looked silly.
Looked stupid. Yeah.
So, all right, and I mean, Patrick kind of nails one too. this division is a crapshoot. 0 futures on anything. That might be the actual plan of attack for this division. It's very hard to because you're taking a stand against. If you want to take a stand, you're taking a stand against some damn good teams. Have fun with that.
Some really good quarterbacks, some really
kind
good
of
offense.
Pumping the brakes. I'll be betting this team, in game or in a few spots here or there, depending on how things hash out.
Yeah. Oh man, are you intrigued at all by that week 1 spot against the Chargers at +3.5? That's not enough to get you out of bed.
It's a pretty good line.
Oh, okay.
I would bet the dog if you made me bet it. I'm not laying it, but
does what I said about the NFC West last year apply?
Just bet the dog always. Remember that? That was funny when it kept they kept winning outright too. There was a bunch of them where it's like, man, just cashing +200 dogs 2 out of 3 games. Why aren't we betting this?
Every game between 2 AFC West opponents should probably be inside 3. Right?
Yeah. If you can get a bigger number than that, you just take the dog. All right, let's go to another dog team then. So I'll give you a countdown. 5, 2.
Welcome to the deep dive. Andy, the Denver Broncos are up next. And boy, oh boy.
That's what I was going with that.
You were doing a what?
I was doing the mile high, 5,200.
Oh,
5280. And then I forget, I couldn't remember if it was 18 or 80. Just broke my brain. But
what's Russell Wilson's super cringe, get fired up call?
When
Broncos.
Broncos country. Let's go. I don't know. When I text the phone emoji, that means I'm dialed in right now. Please stop tweeting. I want to like you, and you're not making it easy on me, Mr.
Oh my God.
Wilson.
The cringe is unbearable. It's unbearable. All right, let's talk about the Denver Broncos, which is a really, really, really interesting handicap because this is a team that has made the most dramatic quarterback improvement from year N-1 to year N. No, this of everyone's in this season. No team has made a greater improvement in quarterback from last year to this year than the Denver Broncos. Even the Colts. As much as I hate Wentz and as much promise as Matt Ryan has shown, this was a bigger deal. And in a particularly in the old NFL when Russell Wilson was winning Super Bowls in 2012, when the quarterbacks just in aggregate weren't that good. This is one of those moves that completely flips win probability for a whole conference. But moving him to Denver and into the AFC West is only enough to get this team from 4th to 3rd.
And again, like we said,
crazy.
It's such an arms race, and then you have the Chiefs who already were sitting on a stockpile of cruise missiles. They didn't even need to really get too involved, but just a crazy arms race against a bunch of really, really, really tough adversaries. And this was what the Raiders probably should have had. Actually, if you look at Pythag, the Raiders probably should have won 7 games. This team did win 7 games, and they're reminiscent of the Panthers team we talked about a couple weeks ago, whereas, hey, this team's 3-0. Maybe Teddy Covers can lead a team to the playoffs, and then it's like, oh, it was the Giants, the Jags, and the Jets. And they only won 4 more games for the entire rest of the year. Part of that because of some injuries, most notably Teddy, who, again, we're never going to be excited about Teddy for a super high-end ceiling guy, but he is much, 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 much better, than Drew Lock. Drew Lock is just probably not an NFL quarterback. It's just still a thing. I don't know if he's God, who's a tight end down in New Orleans?
Taysom Hill.
He's like Taysom Hill, or it's like, why is this guy getting another shot? What are we doing with Drew Lock out in another team? And maybe he doesn't even start the season, but Drew Lock was real bad. They fired Vic Fangio. We kind of called that a couple years ago, where it's like, I don't think he's ever going to be able to take this team to do anything. And to be fair to Vic, he really didn't have great luck. He didn't get the support from the front office to get him the quarterback he needed. Like when they could have gone out and did other things, they went and got Teddy. I mean, that's not like a vote of confidence. Like, hey, we're ready to compete this year. So, and then in the offseason too, they did what I guess everybody supposed was just a prelude to Aaron Rodgers coming to town and got Nate Hackett. I really thought that, like, I was semi-believer in that. I thought maybe that was a thing. It was the second straight year that was going to be a thing. But yeah, this was a team that traded away a Hall of Famer midseason. Like there was some strong give up in this team.
Yeah.
And they knew it was like a reset. And I guess again, it's another team that I'm just surprised. Like the Devontae thing surprised me. It's like, oh, they're going for it. And then the Broncos, it's like, oh shit, they're going for it. Like, do they not know what division they're in? Which I guess fuck it. Like if you're gonna go for it, go for it. And Russell Wilson probably makes a big difference. I don't know. Any other thoughts on 2021? It was not a really noteworthy season. I didn't have a lot to say about it.
No, the beginning was the funny part where they literally played the 3 worst teams in the NFL besides the Texans. And they won all 3, and people were fired up about them. And they went off as a pick 'em, I think, against the Ravens. Is that right? It was like that game, that week 4 was like, we're going to finally learn something about these guys. And the Ravens beat the ever-loving shit out of them. And then you kind of knew what you had. And yeah, I mean, Teddy covers sort of, not a guy that I'm like, yeah, you said it right. Like I was never dying to build around him, but he was a lot better than Drew Lock. And the Drew Lock experience was a disaster when he had to come in and take reps. I think Drew Lock, yeah, he was, other than the rookies, he was the worst graded quarterback that I had that started at least 3 games last year in the NFL, which is not great. Because like guys like Trevor Siemian are on that list. So not good. The general, looking at their roster, I was surprised when I went through my grades on these guys to see who like the big contributors were. They were almost all defense. And they were not guys whose names you would really know off the top of your head either. They got a really solid year of production at a 7th round pick from the Raiders, Shelby Harris. He played great for them as a D end. Their most valuable player overall on this roster was Justin Simmons, the free safety. He was incredible.
He had like
last
80
year.
tackles. Like,
he was incredible. Yeah.
He was. They got good safety play.
Yeah, they really did.
Like as a whole.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. And their cornerback room. Their cornerback room is good too. Surtain and Kareem Jackson are both those are both bona fide guys. Linebacker Malik Reed I had as a above average grade. Defensive tackle was a problem for them. Bradley Chubb only starting 7 games was a problem for them. They really expected him to be like a big time difference maker.
Yeah.
And yeah, when you ship Von Miller and Chubb is unavailable. And now you're everything in your pass rush rests on Shelby Harris doing his job. That's tough. So I didn't mention anything about any offensive players there, which says the offense was kind of stinky last year. I mean, your brightest spot is probably rookie running back Javonte Williams. Yikes.
Yeah.
The offensive line was pretty weak, but not like stinks out loud bad. Garrett Bowles is Garrett Bowles. Cushenberry was fine as the center, but not great. Yeah, Bobby Massey I had as a passing grade. Everybody else I had as below. Yeah, no wide receivers were mentioned so far. Jerry Jeudy so far has been pretty much a bust. Tim Patrick was not like amazing, but what were you even expecting out of him? And now he's hurt this year, so he's not a factor. Cortland Sutton didn't have a bounce back year last year like a lot of people thought he would. He ended up starting 16 of their 17 games, but just did not make much of an impact for whatever reason. Tight end Noah Fant was a bust. Yeah, like basically the entire offense last year busted. Every player. And maybe that was because of the quarterback, but I think they're just maybe not that talented.
Yeah, I want to give them, and that's where I'm at with this team. I'm giving them probably the benefit of the doubt because of the quarterback play. And that brings us to, can a quarterback elevate a team like this? We've seen quarterbacks elevate teams. We've seen a team lose a quarterback and just, it's like, oh man, it was really on the, I mean, we just talked about how much we thought Derek Carr was responsible for some of the good things we saw to that offense and that team in general. And I mean, Teddy's respected. I don't think Teddy's like someone you wouldn't like, or the teams talk shit about him. There are quarterbacks. It's like, oh man, this guy just, nobody liked him in the locker room. Nobody was rallying to get behind this guy. But it's just, you didn't have a high talent level at the quarterback level. And then you had Drew Lock for part of the season. So maybe, we always talk about like, oh, how many young, talented receivers they have, but we've just never seen them put it all together. And if they truly do have all this unlocked potential, then holy Christ, watch out. And again, Tim Patrick was part of that, and he's now out with an ACL, but they still have, 3 good receivers. Fant, I think, has some potential to be unlocked as well too. I don't think any of these guys is like, on watch for, some sort of outstanding, 1,500-yard season or like eye-popping numbers. And we're talking about them to be offensive player of the year. But I think as a whole, it's like some of the parts. And again, you talked about the offensive line, not great names, but good enough. Like this offense is good enough where if Russ can come in and we find out like, holy Christ, like he was just held back for so long. Like the make or let Russ cook thing is really a thing, and he can take a bunch of younger players to the next level. It could be a good offense. How many times did I say if in that long monologue? There's probably just too many ifs in there for me to just say for sure, like, Judy and Sutton are going to be very good because they just haven't had a quarterback. Like that's a possibility. I just don't. I mean, how many of those things need to happen for them to be a team that can compete to win this division? It's a bunch of them. I love Russ. I really, he's not going to run and scramble as well as he did when he, even 5 years ago, but he's still got it. And any stats you use from last season are highly flawed just because they rushed.
Throw out everything. Throw out everything after the injury.
They rushed him back and he looked like hot garbage. So Russ is, I mean, you can't really grade Russ without grading, even in a forward-looking sense, like we're trying to do as a prediction. You can't really just grade Russ. You have to grade Russ and the offense. Like, can a person of his age come into a new system like this and just elevate all these guys who are supposed to be good enough for this team to win? Because how many games does this team have to win the division? Minimum.
11.
Yeah, there is a doomsday scenario where like all these teams win like 10, 11 games. Yeah. But yeah, it's 11 with a tiebreaker, or 12 is where I'm at.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, realistically, you need to win 12, but I think it could. You said minimum. I think 11 could win this division. Yeah. Yeah.
Dan says the wide receiver who played quarterback because of COVID wasn't that much worse than Locke. It's funny, the running back, I can't remember who the running back was that actually got the start, but a running back took the first snap, so he took the loss as a quarterback
as a starting quarterback
because he took the first snap ahead of
he had the Kendall Hinton guy.
He was the pitcher of record in that one, but and also it failed to mention in all of this too is you no longer have a defensive minded head coach in charge of this offense, this team in general, and you no longer have Pete Carroll in charge of Russell Wilson's, level of potential as well. So, I don't know. Like, we'll find out a lot about Hackett too. He brought in Justin Outten, which was just another guy he brought. It's the same thing as what we saw in Raiderland, where it's like Hackett's going to call plays, and he brought in a guy from Green Bay with him. It was an offensive lineman played offensive lineman at Cuse. That's what I have for a long time ago. They said he will be up in the booth as you'll see. Hackett wants to use him. Like Hackett obviously be on the field. You're never going to see a head coach upstairs, I guess. But he said he really wants to be able to use him as like watching the game from up there and being a big part of in-game decision making or adjustments. So we'll find out he's all about.
Okay, so let's put a bow on the corny new quarterback. Russell Wilson is very, very, very tough to cheer for because he's so corny. Even though he's a good guy by all accounts and is doing good, he's doing right by his team. He's a team player. He obviously he's like quirky. I guess he's just quirky, and that works in Seattle. Probably works in Denver, but a new team, it's going to take a little bit of adjustment for him to really have like the voice in the locker room that people are kind of rallying behind, I guess. And Hackett being a new coach in there at the same time is interesting. So there's not like an established leader already. They're going to be kind of jockeying for that, I suppose, or Hackett's going to, do whatever he can to make sure the players are bought into the Russ system and, his the way he wants to operate. When it comes to quality of play for him, I completely agree throughout everything you got from Russ from after the finger injury on last year, because it was never right and because he came back too quickly. And I'm also okay suspending some of the perceived underachievement of the Seattle Seahawks with Russell Wilson as more a function of Pete Carroll and Brian Schottenheimer and some of the mistakes that they were making in terms of play sequencing and play design. Rather than Russell Wilson, in any way slipping in terms of his performance or his potential, with one exception. And this is what spooks me about Wilson this year. And you tell me if I'm crazy. But usually the worst performance we saw from Russell Wilson came not after his finger injury in terms of recent career. His worst performance was
game?
The
first half of the
game
Vikings
against
game?
the Rams.
Oh God, yeah, that
the playoff game against the Rams. That was bad news by him. And what was unique about that game is that was at a time where defensive coordinators, Staley in particular, was designing plays with the too high safety concept, with the idea of we are going to take away the deep stuff and force you to operate over the middle of the field in the short intermediate area. And basically take away the home run threat, which is what, when Russ was cooking, that was what was happening. He was just absolutely electric, hitting DK Metcalf, down the field, moving the sticks with deep passes, high degree of difficulty passes to Lockett, and in general, making some plays with his legs along the way. Like, he was a dynamic factor, on the offensive side of the ball, independent of Pete Carroll running a garbage offensive system, until he ran into the too high safety. And I worry a bit that being sort of the hot trend in all defensive coordinating rooms across the NFL is a potential problem in terms of late career Russ Wilson looking anything like what we saw from this guy in the 2010s. And I will be happily proven wrong, because it will be entertaining as shit football if these guys are going toe to toe and score for score with the likes of the Chiefs and the Chargers this year. But
yeah,
I'm worried about it, because there's a narrative explanation for why the too high safety is so effective against him. And you know what I'm going to say, right? It's because he's too damn short.
Yeah.
And he never really wants to. He doesn't really want to operate in the portion of the field where you can find space against that type of defense. So it's a little kryptonite-y for Russell Wilson.
Yeah, and well, this team, this whole division is going to be a lot of us being wishy-washy. I don't have like really, really strong takes on a single team in this division, honestly. Like, still listen Wednesday. I'll have some hot takes. Don't worry. I was just kidding, guys. But final thoughts for me on possible, if you got to throw out a shitty conspiracy theory, I get to two.
Okay.
Motivation for Hackett to get the most out of Russell Wilson. Do you know what I'm going to say?
No.
Hackett's father who was part of the Bill Walsh 49ers teams, coached under him, got himself a ring, was fired as the USC head coach when they wanted to let an NFL coach take over.
Whoa.
And that NFL coach was
Mr. Pete Carroll.
Pete Carroll put his dad out of a job.
Oh,
I mean,
so if we can revive late career Russ and really stick it in Pete's eye, we get a little revenge for the old man. Oh, Andy, that's a good.
I just stumbled on that. It made me laugh so hard.
Good dig. I think the concern is real though about the too high safety thing, because you're in a division with Pat Mahomes, which is what that was designed to stop. Which means everybody in your division is.
Yeah, we're already practicing this.
We're already thinking about that. Yeah, and you're in the division with Brandon Staley, who stuffed it down your throat when he was the D coordinator with the Rams, and so you're going to get that twice this year. And so the idea that Russ is solved scares me from being more bullish on what is otherwise a humongous upgrade for this team, which tends to mean big improvement in in overall win-loss performance. Typically, this is like an easy call. This team is going to be great, and people don't see it because they just aren't really correctly grading how big of an improvement you got from this quarterback change. So I wanted to be more excited about the Broncos than I am this year, but ultimately Russ being solved is not something that I haven't figured out one way or the other, whether Russ has more magic left. Because again, Pat Hackett and what he got, Hackett, he revived late career Aaron Rodgers. Like Aaron Rodgers was washed. He was washed with period. And
our biggest unknown for this team that is not Russ Wilson, straight up just Russ Wilson, is Hackett. Like that is the most important thing. And I guess we were high on Hackett in Jacksonville, and then I don't know, that team really just didn't compose itself like a team where it's like, hey, we should be looking at this guy.
It was Blake Bortles though, right?
It was a Blake Bortles thing, but he got picked up to go up to Green Bay with, and I think he was, and people have said this, he was a big part of kind of getting Rodgers back in line. I don't think that's the right wording. It's not like you were able to disciplinary in Aaron Rodgers, but I think he was a big part of getting him to buy in. That's probably a better way to put that.
Okay.
To be what he was these last 2 years. And God, what was I wrote this down too. It's from the Football Outsiders. And Hackett is reportedly among the select company of humans that Aaron Rodgers likes and trusts, along with Joe Rogan, Jake Kummerow, Randall Cobb, and a few Ayn Rand novel protagonists. That line made me laugh pretty hard, but like Rodgers doesn't like anyone. And like the fact that he did have some sort of a positive relationship with Hackett, and Hackett seemed to get a lot out of him. I think a lot of that was Hackett, maybe not so much LaFleur. It makes me feel positive about Nathaniel Hackett, again, without ever seeing. Again, we were leery about a guy who's actually coached as a head coach in the NFL and has spent a good chunk of his career with Bill Belichick and a great front office, like who should have absorbed massive knowledge. And we're like, just don't know. Maybe the guy is a great offensive coordinator, can't do it as a head coach. So it forces me to not be able to be super positive on, again, the biggest unknown. How will he be as far as running this team? And like I said, I talked about the OC is going to be up in the booth helping, but he's going to be the head coach who also calls plays. And to your point about the Rams, though, their DC was somebody they swiped from the Rams. So that is, someone who's has some intimate knowledge of how that defense operated and did a lot with little depth, let's say. So hopefully, maybe this defense can take a step. That my two biggest unknowns are Hackett, and it's like, will the defense get what they want out of a bunch of these players that they haven't so far yet? And if that stuff happens, they can compete. But this team probably has more what ifs than the Raiders. Like if I didn't just have it in my head that I was going to put these in order by betting odds when I did it,
Yeah.
I would have put the Broncos as 4th.
Ooh,
Sorry,
really?
Denver.
Ooh.
The
list
more
of
of a known
unknowns
quantity in Carr.
The list, yeah, right. The list of unknowns for me with the Raiders is long. I agree. I am the most, I guess, the unit that looks the strongest to me on paper is their secondary. I think this is going to be a very solid and reliable pass defense from a, just in general lineup and prevent your opponent from getting an outrageous lead on you by by hitting home runs, and or prevent your opponent from coming back on you if you have a lead. Right? Like it looks like a team that should be able to protect a lead because of the strength of the pass defense. And then, I guess, fuck, I really don't know what to make of Bradley Chubb. I don't know if he'll ever realize the.
He's gonna stay healthy first.
Yeah, I don't know if he'll ever realize the potential there or not. Similarly with Randy Gregory, he might have cashed in on what was a fluky season or fluky couple seasons there. Tough to really, really get excited about him. And yeah, there are other issues on this defense that look problematic. Like the run defense is not great. Like some teams, if they have a lead against them, are going to be tough to get off the field. You're going to have a tough time keeping, the likes of the Chiefs from just sitting on the clock, sitting on the ball for 6 minutes at the end of the fourth quarter and not ever even giving you a chance to come back. Like there's a couple of those scenarios that spook me about the Broncos getting wins because of the run defense questions I have with these guys. And then offensive line, fine. Not writing home about how excited I am to see these guys block, but it's not like Russell Wilson has ever really had a good offensive line, so who really cares? Running back room, no questions for me there. That's a good unit. But the wide receivers, I do have some questions about, and that's probably like the Hackett plus wide receivers with potential plus Russell Wilson finding a little bit of what do you call it? The anti-aging, kind of vibe.
Oh, the Tom Brady lotion.
Sure. He gets some Tom Brady lotion. Hackett turns out to have great scheme, and these wide receivers were all ready to pop. And all of a sudden, this is a top 10 offense, and this is now competing for an AFC West. But that's their ceiling, and a lot of those have to go right.
Where did DJ Jones grade out for you? I'm looking at the inside of the line. I think you could have a goodish offensive or defensive line, and then if Bradley Chubb is healthy and plays good, that's just bonus. And then again, the Randy Gregory thing has to work out a little too, but it's kind of like the offense. We're talking about a bunch of guys like if Bradley Chubb is healthy, if Randy Gregory isn't washed, if DJ Jones just needed to find himself in a better position, if we get the same kind of play out of the safeties and the corner, I think the corners are all right. Like,
was Jones on San Francisco last year? That's why I can't find it. Okay. Yeah, there's a Draymond Jones that I had graded on on
DJ Jones.
DJ Jones was
a
Niner, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, he was a Niner last year. Okay, let me see what my grade on him is. Because Draymond Jones, I have his replacement, exactly the replacement level. But that's what you expect out of a third-year DT. Sorry, I'm pulling up DJ now.
Oh, no worries. That's kind of my last. I wasn't honestly all that excited.
So what's your read on the wide receiver room? Do you agree, or do you have if I'm 20-60-20 on the wide receivers room, 20% that Sutton doesn't really have it, Jones is, Judy is a bust, and they don't have a great third option, is 20% of my prob. 60% of my probability is that these is an average unit and less excellent unit than Russ has had in Seattle over the last handful of years, and then 20% that all these guys are ready to pop, and that this is like good chemistry with Russ. Where are you on that spectrum?
Probably 20, like what you said, like 20-60-20. Like, so it's almost like hitting a parlay. Like all the wide receivers have to meet some level of potential, and one of the 4 is already injured, and Fant in that, maybe Alberto, but it does feel like hitting a parlay for this wide receiver room to be as good as even what we're seeing in Oakland.
And I have a really good grade on DJ
Las
Jones,
Vegas.
by the way. Yeah, I have a really good grade on DJ Jones.
Good.
I didn't realize,
Yeah,
but he was on a really good line.
Good in the middle.
He was
That's where
that's
where again it's a question mark. Like you come to a different team, are you still going to be plugging up the middle and getting pressure up the gut? But yeah, take a peek at who they play, because here's the thing.
Mm-hmm.
Now we say this and we do this every time we get to a new division. We're like, hey, it's pretty similar because they all play the same kind of teams. Denver's is easier
because it's a 4th place schedule.
Yeah. So they got the benefit of that. They still have to play, the teams in the division. So it's tough, but they get a bunch of these games in kind of nice spots. They get Indy to come up to Denver on a short week. Like they get the Jets here. Jacksonville, I guess maybe that's not the best spot, having to travel there for a 9 a.m. Is that a London game?
Yeah, it is.
Okay. So you get the weird, at least they took the bye after, like, don't give me a rookie head coach not taking the bye after a London game. So you get the London game where it's not a true road game against Jacksonville, although Jacksonville has got to be pretty comfortable there at this point. And then the Carolina game later in the season where maybe they're playing a rookie quarterback at that point, or maybe Darnold's in. God knows what's happening there. Arizona, I still don't have rated that highly. So it's tough because you still play those teams, and you still play Baltimore. You still play the Niners, which how are they? And maybe we've just bought too much into the Lance stuff, but that number seems a little off.
Yeah, so does the Indy one. They're 3-point favorites against Indy.
Early in the season, at altitude, is a little bit of a bump, but I don't know. They're favored versus the Niners, huh?
Yeah,
might
it's
have
weird.
After we shit talk this team for like 30 minutes, I kind of want to bet against them a little bit here.
Well, there's no reason to rush, Andy.
Walk, don't run.
These guys are gonna take care of business. Week 1 and week 2. Seattle and Houston. Is there a softer start to anyone's season?
Not really. Unless you get to play Houston twice.
That's pretty good. Good travel spot for you against Houston on top of that. Like, yeah, no. This is a team that I think thumps their opponents twice, and then you maybe could get 3 for the Niners. Although you know what? I forgot. Niners start soft too. The Niners start with
someone's has got to go.
Chicago, yeah. Niners start Chicago, Seattle. Is that right? I think they do.
Yeah, that sounds right. They have tight game week 1, and then 38-3 week 2, and then this team's 2-0. Russ is leading the rallying cry. It's Broncos country, and then the Niners pass rush wrecks him.
Yeah,
and I don't know. The rest is history. Yeah, there'll be some spots to bet against this team if they come up, even like coming off the bye. And I'm not a Tennessee guy, but man, coming off the bye on a road game like that, where you might be able to get Tennessee at a dog price if they're not playing the best. A lot of these divisional games, I don't know. Yeah, I'm not saying I hate to say I'm going to bet against teams repeatedly because I never know how I'm going to have them rated later in the year. But it feels like a team I might be betting against if there's any buy-in from the market on the I don't want to call it the Russell Wilson experiment. He's good. He's still good. Yeah. It's not going to be the odds of it being an abject disaster seem pretty low.
Very low. Yeah, very low.
I just feel like it's going to be a middle of the pack team. This is a 8-9, 9-8.
We agree on that. And I'm probably not going to bet on much this year, one way or the other. I think that's where I'm at. They should beat the crap out of the crap.
Did you see Femi's comment here? Jesus. I'll
be Denver
using Denver week 2 if I make it that far in Survivor.
Well, week 1's a little tricky, but yeah.
Week 1 is a minefield.
It's a good spot.
I've been there.
Yeah, it's a good. I mean,
think positive.
Look, if when are you going to use Denver? Early in the season, when the altitude really just thunderfucks the other team, and that is a great spot for it.
Isn't this how we felt about the Rams the year before?
No, I think
we had a little bit of a
Rams
quantity in the
Rams had more like top end talent. Like that's where I'm fundamentally stuck with these guys. They have middling talent. Like there's no one.
And a coach we don't really know about.
Like there's no one on this roster who I'm like, if I'm starting a franchise and I need to fill like one position, who's a guy that I desperately want to go get? There's not really any of those guys on this squad, right? No, there's no elite difference maker outside of Russell Wilson, and my questions about him are already on record. So. I'm not like a free safety. What good is it having the best free safety in football, Andy? Does that matter?
Minnesota
it doesn't hurt you, but
had some good safeties over the years. They haven't won a lot.
Yeah. What good does it have? What good does it do you if you have Javonte Williams in a running back by committee? like gets you any wins? I don't know. Like they should, we'll wait till we get to betting plan of attack, I guess. But the roster is lackluster. They haven't been drafting well. Let's look at their odds.
Patrick has a good point. How can coaching not be an upgrade from last year? I mean, there's still a chance that he's just completely lost as a new head coach, and it's not better than Vic Fangio. Like
that happens a lot.
I don't really know how bad Vic Fangio was. Like I don't think that was ever the answer.
Kingsbury's still trying to figure it out,
Yeah, I mean Fangio just never really was given all the pieces, and then they had some bad injury luck as well. But it should be. I believe it will be, but it's still a question mark.
The Broncos.
So these odds are
17-1 to win the Super Bowl. Not for my money. No, thank you.
Not great, Bob.
They are 8 plus 850 to win the AFC. I would need well over 10-1 to think about that price. They are plus 260 to win the AFC West. Even that is not enough. That needs to be like 3-1-ish. To make the playoffs, yes, is minus 146. That no price is tempting. Plus 120. I'm not really into laying that type of price for a season-long bet like this, but I don't know.
No,
AFC is so damn crowded.
Bet against the team instead.
So damn crowded. Regular season win total over 9.5 is minus 135. So somebody's been out there betting this team. And I mean, Russell Wilson winning 10 games, you can basically write it in pen. He does it every freaking year, it feels like. So maybe that's what the enthusiasm is. I don't know, but that's for over 9.5 to be minus 135 juiced is that doesn't seem right to me. God damn.
Yeah, if I had to bet one thing,
we talked ourselves into a pickle here, Andy. We should be betting these guys under. If I had to bet
one thing, it would be plus the plus money no on the playoffs. And again, I don't like those. I've talked about this. If I'm going to invest in season long anything, it needs to be a wild ass price on a long shot that I think is way too long for an award. Even though I did bet some Olave at 12-1, which I regretted immediately. I just fell in love with the guy too much. It's like the one I'd look at all the time in my tracker and get mad about, but it has to be that or a really sizable edge on a win total where I'm dabbling a little in the alts as well. So it's tough for me to say like plus 120 is just such a banger that I need to bet that for no. But yeah, if I did bet this team, it would be an under in the regular season win total, and it's hard to bet against a guy like Russ Wilson in that market. So really not looking at anything here.
No, Russell Wilson has made it getting to that 10-win mark somewhat of a habit. Last year, I'm throwing out again because of the injury, but that was only the second time in his career he has had fewer than 10 wins in a season. And this was back in the day when we had 16 games, not 17. So like he does have a flair for the dramatic. He does have a flair for getting those hard fought close wins. And if that's the way they want to play the game this year, so be it. I won't be involved one way or the other, I don't think.
Yeah.
Betting plan of attack in the primetime games. If the Broncos have a good game plan, if there's chemistry developing between Wilson and these wide receivers, between Wilson and the coach, I will happily back them in a second half spot because they have a solid running attack. And to me, at least, they look like a team that can put away an opposing team that's trying to come back through the air, right? In an obvious passing situation, that's the secondary I want out on that field. So I feel like they're a decent second half bet with the lead.
Yeah, if you're seeing anything out of this team, we've talked about a couple teams like this where it's like, hey, this team is leading at half and they are a second half underdog. You believe and I'd need to learn about Hackett a little. Like, what is his, what's his thought?
What are his in-game adjustments?
Yeah, what's his in-game stuff look like? But
is this team playing better EPA per play in the second half than the first half? That kind of stuff.
I love betting that at a dog price with a decent chance at a push, or teams up by 7 going in the second half and they're a 2-point underdog. You can get a little dog price on them. Oh yeah, I would do that. And again, it would be depending on a lot of the unknowns coming through and me liking what I see out of Hackett. And the thing is too, you got to make some snap decisions. It's not like I'm going to get 40 games of Hackett to make these decisions on. Like it's going to be pretty early on. But yeah, it's a team that's, like you said, the defense probably is one of the better defenses in the league as far as we're playing with a lead. We can stop the pass.
Yeah,
we should have a decent pass rush, and we have a decent secondary. And it's not what it once was, this storied Broncos defense of years past, but I wouldn't mind that.
Yeah. Chubb, a healthy season out of Chubb helps me with that opinion even more, right?
Randy Gregory coming in and just playing well immediately.
Yeah, that would be a big deal for sure. What was my Randy Gregory career? I want to look at his career.
I don't know what to make of that guy.
I don't either, really. He's just kind of he was a 0 in Dallas for 4 years. He was a 0, and then exploded last year statistically, but really didn't move the needle much in terms of an all-around player performance. So I think he might not be very good.
Somebody's asking about Javonte over 925 rushing yards. I don't know I'd have to talk to my fantasy guys to ask what the split is with Melvin. I don't know about betting running back overs. Usually bad.
Yeah, because injury risk is real.
Just there's so much injury risk, and just all it takes is missing 2 games for if a running back has an high ankle sprain, the under cashes because that's a 3-week injury, and you're just not going to get there. Yep. There's so many ways to get together, and I believe that was the one too where someone had said they'd run the old numbers, the closing numbers at Pinnacle for 5 years. It's if you bet and these were for single games, but that's a derivative of the full season rushing totals. If you bet the unders in those running backs just blindly at close for 5 years, it was profitable, despite how high the juice is on player props. Running backs numbers are usually a little inflated. No, take that with a grain of salt, but yeah, and 70-30 with Gordon maybe gets him there. I'm probably never ever betting a running back over.
There's better things you can do with your money. I'm not laying minus 115 on Stevens.
No, I'm trying to think of better ways to attack that. Maybe if you like him,
just get him in best ball. Yeah, get him in some best ball.
Well, and there's some ways to attack that early in the season with some of his game totals if you think it's against a good matchup as far as the opposing defense. I don't know. There's a lot of ways to look at that. Those are tough for me to grab because again, he got turf toe. Well, you're fucked. You lost.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I agree with all that. I think playing the season-long player props is under or pass for almost everything.
Someone's asking how you make player rankings. I think some of it's just composite of some people who are actually better at making player rankings. I know that plays a part in your rankings.
Yes, that's almost entirely it. Some of it is box score. I'm effectively using a the composite of what PFF does for game grades, and what Pro Football Reference does for approximate value, and then adding a layer of just box score EPA differential, which I think is useful. The It's almost impossible to correctly divorce the contributions of everyone, especially on defense. Like that's a really weird black box to kind of give credit for a good defense to the different players. But it's if you're just looking at PFF grade and combine that with approximate value on Pro Football Reference, then that's a great starting point. I wish there was like a Darko for football players. There's not. And it would be cool if there was.
There's
and I thought about it a lot this summer, trying to basically emulate that. Like, can you do a Darko regression for using box scores? But there are a couple of hiccups that we don't need to get into today. Sample size isn't quite big enough.
NFL individual player grades, no matter how good, are going to have a ton of noise. Because there's, and I know PFF tries so hard to do. It's almost like in the baseball stats where you see this is defense independent stats. It's similar to that, where it's like, hey, we have to adjust for what he had to account for on that play, but it's still a lot of it is
subjectivity.
It is subjective. Like that's part of there's people that's their job is doing their best.
That's why I like a blend of PFF and Pro Football Reference, because Pro Football References, the way I understand it, is entirely quantitative box score driven, and PFF's is entirely subjective eyeball test.
But subjective, but they try to be subjective with a high level of consistency.
Yeah, right, sure.
Which is takes some of the sting out of something being subjective. But no, that's a good question, and it's really hard. But mine are. Yeah, Femi says circumstances matter so much. Like if he gets hung out on an island by, another person not sealing the edge, that's where that's where the subjective grade is going to be better on that play, because they're able to say like, oh man, he got just fucked by his teammate there. Like that's not his fault. Or just like, hey, guess what? It was against Aaron Rodgers and he put it in a goddamn window the size of a mouse. Like sometimes that shit happens. You can't be you give up a touchdown on that play. Guess what? Every cornerback in the league is giving up a touchdown on that play. It's tricky. So
I think I
use Madden grades.
Hey, people have,
using part of that as your composite wouldn't be the worst.
No, I mean the other way of trying to think about that as like a wins over replacement sort of framework, those are out there. I just haven't tested them aggressively enough to tell you if they're useful or not. And for pricing, for forward pricing, I'm not sure. I guess one other note: if you're going to go scrape a bunch of Pro Football Reference stuff and you want approximate values, they're tough to get, which is funny. Like they kind of bury them, which I laugh about. And you got to normalize it for games, for actual snaps. So you need, in order to use the Pro Football Reference approximate value, which I think is kind of a little bit of a hidden edge, you got to scrape snap percentage too. Because that matters, because it's a cumulative number, right? Like a guy can just get a big approximate value just because he played a shit ton of snaps for a team in a given season. So to normalize it, you need to know like what percentage of snaps they played.
Sure. Well, let's call it a podcast. We're kind of dragging
Nice.
ass here a little bit. Like the energy.
Well, Andy, we were
sorry. Like we just got back from Vegas, guys. Sorry.
Yeah. I didn't think we were dragging ass. I thought we were kind of.
I'm feeling a little tired at the end of the podcast. Maybe I'm just getting older. But boy, we stayed out pretty late. Like, and again, I'm on Central Time, so I mean, we got back to the hotel like 1. That's 3 for Andy. Andy was whooped Sunday. I was the guy who like was trying to watch a movie on the plane and my head snapped a couple times when I fell asleep.
What'd you try to watch?
I watched. Oh man, we don't have enough time for this. Everything, everywhere, all at once.
That's what I watched. Really? That's funny. I watched that on the plane too.
It's one I need to watch.
I need to watch it again.
Yeah, I'm like,
I don't know what the fuck was going on.
It was a lot. It was like
what the.
Well, because I fell asleep a couple times too. I was just so tired, but. Yeah, that was a trip. I would like to probably eat a bunch of edibles and then watch it again, and then maybe one time not high as shit. But yeah, that movie was something. I digress. And
I didn't know what it was going to be at all, so I was totally surprised. And yeah, I barely had enough time to watch it because we sat on the runway for a fucking hour waiting to take off. So, but that allowed me enough time to watch the movie because my flight was only an hour. But anyway, decent entertainment. Anyway, let's call it a pod. Great job. Thank you, Dan, as always.
Hit
pod
the
number
thumbs
500.
up. We'll see you guys later.
Number 500 in the book. Actually, this was 501, Andy.
Oh, yeah, shit. We did 2 podcasts.
501.
All right, see you guys. We flew right past 500. Right?
I can't believe we picked the same movie. I was on Southwest. Quite double.
That's crazy. What you're watching.